And what a beautiful spring day to gather, yes, amen, to gather for a really lovely event. You know, if you've been a part of this Trinity community, that tenure lectures are one of the special things that we get to do as we celebrate together one of our colleagues who stands as a tenured faculty member. That is, an exemplar in their own particular way of what it means to be a professor at Trinity Christian College. And so I am really pleased to welcome you today to the tenure lecture for Dr. Tina Decker, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to her, though because of her contributions to this place, she really needs no introduction. Nevertheless, it's my pleasure. So Tina Decker joined the faculty at Trinity Christian College in 2010, then as assistant professor of nursing, bearing a Master's of Science in Nursing from Governor State University. She was promoted to associate professor in 2018 after completing her doctorate of nursing practice, also from Governor State, where she just happened to receive the institutional award for Doctoral Nursing Program Outstanding Student of the Year. Not bad. But Tina's connection to Trinity is more deeply rooted still. She's a graduate of this place. She's an alum with a fruitful career on the women's soccer team. And she's been an important leader both then as a student and now in her department and on campus. Tina chairs our nursing department and has done so since 2014, coinciding with a remarkable run of excellent nursing outcomes and wonderful nursing graduates. She currently serves as chair of the Personnel Committee, one of the most significant committees on our campus, in a role that demonstrates the confidence that her colleagues have in her judgment, in her equity, and in her vision. And she served in lots of other ways, too. Your committee list is pretty long, actually. Here's a few highlights: Program Review Committee, Faculty Development Committee, Economic Benefits Committee, Retention Committee. And beyond Trinity, Tina has served on the Illinois Association of Colleges of Nursing Task Force, in particular working on baccalaureate nursing. You might not know this, but Tina has been an important advocate for 4-year BSN programs in the state of Illinois, helping actually to resist some legislative moves that would really change the shape of nursing education in the state of Illinois. You might not know that, but that's been significant work that Tina's done in the broader context here. One of the pleasures of my work, you know, is to get the chance to observe faculty teaching, and so I've had the chance to see Tina in the classroom multiple times and can attest that she's an excellent teacher. Students respect her voice in the classroom, and she brings to her work a deep commitment to the Reformed theological convictions of the college. In leadership settings, I've seen Tina function as an excellent problem solver. She's creative. She can see multiple ways to go after a problem. She can provide opportunities that are organized and clear-minded. And even today, on the day of her tenure lecture, she sent to me a long email about some possibilities for nursing and missions practices. So if you've been around Tina, you'll know her to be diligent, organized, a bearer of high standards, the possessor of an excellent sense of humor, and the holder of many good soccer stories. Just get her started. But to get the real scoop, I turn to those who work most closely with Tina. And I want you to listen to what her colleagues share about her. It's a little bit of a long list, but it's worth it. Tina is devoted to student excellence. She's extremely dedicated to developing strong Christian nurses, setting a foundation for nurses to excel as Christians out in the communities that they serve. She's passionate about nursing education. Tina's committed to holding students to high standards of excellence. Students, can I get an amen? She's professional. Tina is innovative. Tina is an excellent inspiration for staff and students. Tina can keep the big picture in mind, as well as the many details about scheduling, load hours, clinical placement, all in her head, probably because she initially thought about going into engineering. That was one of my favorites. Tina has taught us what teaching a Christian nurse and professor is about. Tina's dedicated, sincere, has a huge impact on the profession of nursing, and is an inspiration. You're hearing that word a lot. Tina has roots that grow deeply into Trinity's soil and branches that reach up higher every year as she grows professionally and personally. Tina is loyal. Tina is motivated. She's committed to helping our students succeed and equipping our faculty to help students succeed. Tina provides great leadership for our department. It's a good list, and if you've had the chance to work with Dr. Decker, you've experienced some of those things firsthand. And so, my friends, we are in today for a rich afternoon as we have the opportunity to celebrate the gifts that God has poured out on this campus through Tina Decker. And you'll remember that at Trinity, tenure is not a bar, at the tenure lecture, I should say, is not a bar over which a faculty member must scramble in order to earn tenure. Instead, it's a celebration. This is a celebration of tenure already granted and the mature Christian scholarship of a professor who excels in our community. And so it's an opportunity to rejoice and learn together. So my friends, in anticipation of that learning and rejoicing, would you join me in welcoming to the podium Dr. Tina Decker?
Wow. Last tenure lecture I went to with was Dr. Keith Starkenberg's, and he said, I thought I wasn't going to get emotional, and I'm feeling a little emotional. I can relate to that, Keith. Thank you for that. So, fair warning, today I'm going to be talking about the image of nursing, and if I do this right, at part of this lecture you're going to feel kind of like bad and maybe some doom and gloom about the world. That being said, I probably packed too much information into like the next half an hour, so I might run out of time. I will try not to leave you there. My hope is we'll have time to bring you out of the doom and gloom into some more positive stuff, but we'll see how that plays out, okay? So, image. What is image? When you think of the image of nursing, what do you see? I'll give you all a moment to close your eyes. If you want to get a moment's rest, that's fine. So just picture what nursing is to you if you had to see that stock image of what it looks like. So some of you may have seen something similar to this. This was submitted by one of my senior nursing majors when I asked them this question before the first day of class, and I thought, oh, this is a nice image. We have making eye contact, and she's looking lovingly and touching up, and she's like, see, I'm here for you. And I thought, oh, that's nice. Not realistic, right? I don't remember ever having a day like that at work. But it's a nice image. How many of you guys saw that when you pictured that image of nursing? Maybe you pictured this. Now we're getting a little more multicultural. We have the patient and that's smiling. The husband, and I know it's the husband because there is a wedding here, which my husband pointed out, how is his arm like that? Now we're picturing like a hammer, put your arm in there to show that, the business shirt and her. I have never had a patient with that way. I just have. So nursing majors, this looks like an average day at work, right? Not so much. But this is what we think of when we think of image of nursing. But some facts about today's registered nurse. It's actually the largest healthcare professional group out of all healthcare professionals. It makes about 40% of all healthcare professionals are registered nurses. If we think a little bit further about what that looks like, that's over 4 million people in the United States are registered nurses. If we think of that compared to the population, our population is about 37% minority right now. Nursing, only about 19%. So we do see a significant difference between what the average nurse looks like compared to the average United States citizen. What about men in nursing? What percentage of men do you think are part of that registered nursing population? Actually coming up, we're up to 9.1% as of 2018. So, but if we compare that to our population, still a little bit of a discrepancy there, right? What about the average age of nursing as of 2018 in the United States? 51. So the average nurse average nurse in the United States is 51. So just when we're thinking about the image of nursing, now kind of keeping that in context. Now, what you might also think of when you think of the image of nursing is that it is a trusted profession. And that really goes hand in hand with the image, is trusting nurses. So this is the 17th straight year of being ranked as the #1 most honest and ethical profession. Now I know this is pretty small. So this is nursing way up here, and the light green is good. Now I like this. What's our very bottom one? Remember to kind of, so now we have a really mind-boggling question that we'll get to later. What happens if you get a nurse? So 17th year, anyone know what the last year nursing lost out on the Gallup poll? Anyone know what that was? I'll give you a hint. It was 2001. Firefighters, 9/11. Okay, so since 9/11, we have consistently been in the #1 top-rated ethics and trustworthy. So a little image that makes me think of, and when I look at this image, 1 John 3:18 comes to mind. Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. And we see that little guy smiling, and trustworthy profession, right? And why does this matter? You know, sometimes we want to say, our image doesn't matter, it's what we do. Well, no, image kind of goes hand in hand with that. And with nursing, to truly provide good care, holistic care, we need people's trust. And that's a part of image. If someone thinks your image is bad, are they going to trust you? Are you going to be able to care for them the way we want to try to care for them? So this all goes hand in hand. I think it's very important, and we have to be aware of the image we're putting out. And right now our image is really good, but I'm kind of worried about some things that are going on. So this is that doom and gloom part, current issues. I'd say we have 3 main threats going on to the image of nursing that we have to identify and think about, and we can't ignore. Number 1, role confusion. Number 2, supply and demand. And number 3, the increasing demand on our ends. We'll break those down a little bit more. So, who is an RN? This is something, if you ask most people, they probably have no clue this is going on. RN is a registered nurse. Did you know there's actually 3 different educational ways that you can become a registered nurse? There's not that many left, but we still have the diploma program that offers primarily through hospital-based settings. We have associate degree nursing programs offered primarily at community colleges. And we have bachelor's degree nursing programs that in Illinois are only offered at 4-year institutions of higher education. That is not the case everywhere. So all of these equal this one thing. Kind of confusing, right? And if you want to add to that of what is a nurse, who's a nurse? Oh dear. How many of you look at this and feel a little bit overwhelmed? Lots going on there. All of this is just looking at the educational background and degrees, not even talking about specialization or certification. So, commonly called nurses, but not technically nurses, we have unlicensed assistant professionals, like a certified nurse assistant or medical assistant. Then we have a step below an RN license, an LPN license, which is a licensed practical nurse. And we have our RN that we're talking about. Then we have MSN or MN, which can lead to degrees that are still RN degrees or advanced practice degrees. So under the RN, we have investigators, specialists, administration, and none of them are considered advanced practice nurses, but then we have advanced practice nurses, we have NPs, CNSs, clinical nurse specialists, clinical nurse midwife, clinical registered nurse anesthetist. All of these are now considered advanced practice registered nurses. Getting confused yet? Oh, and in there we have stuff like your oncology nurse practitioner, family nurse practitioner, acute care nurse practitioner, pediatric nurse practitioner. Oh, and then we have the doctoral level with doctorate of nursing science, which now is more commonly PhD. So if you've had a doctorate of nursing science and you'd rather have PhD, you can pay your school to give you the new license. And then we have doctorate of nursing, which kind of has gone away, and the PhD, which is research focused, but the DMP, which is taking over the it's a point. We have a lot of types of nurses. I can tell you, most nurses in the room, most nurses in the world probably cannot even adequately define the differences between all of these. So what do you think about the average person? How many of you knew half of these existed? Okay, so really, what's the problem with that? Couple different things. This can cause problems in education. First of all, if you take a high school student and you expect them to go find a school and what degree to get, do they really know the difference between this? Probably not. Then you even take a registered nurse who wants to go on to graduate school. Do they really know the difference through this? Probably not. Even if you take a nursing faculty who wants to go on and get an advanced degree, do they know all the differences between this? Probably not. So there's a lot of role confusion when it comes to even education and what degree is it you really want. Then in the healthcare setting, we've tried to get better, like color coding nurses. It doesn't work. How many of you guys have ever been like, well, the nurse told me this, and usually my first response is, was it really a nurse? Was it kind of the angry front office lady? No offense, front office ladies, but sometimes in doctors' offices they can be a little mean, right? I'm like, that's not a nurse, you know, or was it, oh, the nurse told me this, and then you ask around and you realize it was actually the janitor coming into the room and cleaning the garbage. It happens, right? So there's just a lot of confusion, and ultimately then we have people who aren't nurses representing nursing, which can be a problem when it comes to image. This is also a huge problem when it comes to legislation because nursing practice is defined by legislation. So the Illinois law has the Nursing Practice Act, which defines what I as a registered nurse can do and who defines what I as an advanced practice nurse can do. That is by the law. So if the legislator doesn't understand this, how do they create laws that properly define the role? A great example of this is there was actually a point in time when North Dakota had moved to granting that BSN, Bachelor Prepared Nurses, were the entry level to practice. It was actually a real thing in North Dakota. This is the only time in our history that we had a state that had this law in place. And legislation was put out there by long-term care facility advocates that were looking to kind of decrease costs that opposed this, and legislators voted it into practice because they thought they were supporting nursing when it actually was doing the exact opposite. And now we no longer have entry level to practice in any of the 50 states, so that happened back in the 80s. So again, this can be really confusing that people can spin it that bills are thought to be in good places for nursing and they actually aren't. So role confusion is a real problem. Then we have the supply and demand thing. How many of you guys have heard there is a massive national nursing shortage? It's like this fearful thing that keeps us up at night. Let's look at that a little bit. So in 2014, it was projected that there would be a 33% growth in number of RNs nationally. In 3 short years, that jumped up 6% to 39% growth, with demand only increasing 28%. If we look at the number of graduates between 2001 and 2015, we see we more than doubled from 68,800 to 158,000. And if we continue at this rate, by 2030, we'll need just over 2 million new full-time nurses, but only 1 million will be leaving. We got a bit of a discrepancy going on there, huh? So if we look at this, again, I know it's small. By 2030, it is suggested that only 7 states will have not enough nurses in their states. Only 7 out of our states: California, Texas, New Jersey, South Carolina, Alaska, Georgia, South Dakota. Not really Midwest. All the other states are expected to have more supply than demand, with the number one being Florida, having more than 50,000 extra nurses. And you can see Illinois doesn't land on this list. So where is Illinois? Illinois is projected to have 3,600 extra RNs based on this. And now usually the first thing when nurses start hearing this, if you talk to nurse administrators, nurse staff at scale, who did that? I don't believe that. Natural reaction. That's not right. Did they count for this? Did they count for this? Did they count for this? Yes, this was done by the U.S. Labor and Workforce Survey. Kind of Actually, in methodology, just this weekend I talked to your spouse and said, well, I don't trust that. What was the methodology? And I said, well, there's two full pages of it if you'd like to read. But yes, they account for retiring nurses. Yes, they account for growth and change of the healthcare system going into more community, less acute. They account for that. The only thing they don't account for is the potential continued growth of number of nurses we're producing. They're expecting that to kind of be the same, which every single year season changes with something else. So we're expecting a little bit extra in Illinois from Tenure. We can see that just from 2015 to 2018, we increased by 600 new RN candidates. So we see these numbers are trending. Right now we're sitting at just over 190,000 licensed RNs in our state. So why all then, you guys probably remember getting emails from me about this whole RN to BSN, like we need more nurses, like let's create new laws that community colleges can grant the baccalaureate degree. Why all this focus on increasing that to have more nurses? The first question is, RN to BSN actually doesn't create new nurses. So how that's the explanation, I'm not sure, because it takes nurses that are already nurses and just advances their education. But also, we're focused on the shortage where numbers don't actually add up. Why do you think? So let's look at what's been going on in Illinois in the past number of years. We can see in 2011, we still had more associate degree nurses than baccalaureate degree nurses. And this is true across the nation pretty much. And then we saw the shift. For the first time ever, we finally had more baccalaureate first-year nurses than associate degree nurses. And by 2015, you can see almost a complete role reversal, going from 40% to 50%, from 50 to 42. We see the BSN growing by over 800 new students graduating and passing the NCLEX, where the associates actually dropping. While our numbers overall go up and go up. So all said and done between the past 7 years here, we see the BSN producing over 1,000 more new nurses in Illinois, and the associates dropping off. How do you think the associate degree community colleges that are hurting for students feel out of it? We see our numbers of students going up, and the piece of the pie getting smaller, smaller, smaller. If we look at the trend a little bit of a different way, this is a graph showing way back from 1994 all the way to 2010. This purple line, you can see that's associate degree nurses across the United States, and the green line baccalaureate diploma down here. Again, that's up until this 2010 when we hit that big shift. 2010, blue line baccalaureate, red line associate. We see trending down, trending up. Big difference. So where is truly then our shortage? What really is the problem when we're talking about nursing education and moving students through producing more nurses? What do you think this represents? Two things. Two things we don't have enough of. Teachers. We do not have enough teachers. What else are we lacking? Clinical sites. So teachers and clinical sites. We do not have limitless resources. So if we look at nursing faculty, according to the statistics that were collected last year, released this year, over 1,715 faculty vacancies were identified in American Association of Colleges of Nursing schools. And they said an additional 138 positions would be needed to meet the needs of all the students they had. So that's a faculty vacancy rate of 7.9%. Meanwhile, if we remember the average age of a nurse being 51, check out the average age of nursing faculty. This is not counting administration. This is counting faculty. Administration tends to be higher than that. So we see our full professors, average age is 62.4 for those with a doctorate. We can see out of this whole group, the lowest average age we have is with our MSN prepared educators at assistant professorship being 50.6. So when we ask who expects to still be working by 2025, it's expected that 1/3 of the current nursing faculty could be retiring, that they say they want to retire by 2025. That's a real problem. You guys don't get any ideas. You're stuck. One more thing, you're stuck. What do you think this represents? That's not my salary, sorry. No. What do you think? What could that be? This is the average wage across the United States of what an APN, an advanced practice nurse, is making. Average educator is not making that much. So when we're trying to attract new people to be nursing faculty, we're up against a wall because average nurse educators making significantly less than this. So we know the numbers just aren't there, and it's a big question of how are we going to get them there. Clinical sites. We have all these nursing students, where are they going to go? And our partnerships are changing. Some places are limiting the access to associate degree nurses. So those community colleges that are already feeling enrollment crunches and already seeing that nursing programs are growing, but maybe theirs aren't, they're saying, and now we can't send our nursing majors to these colleges, or these healthcare facilities, and so that's stressing them out even more. Some facilities, this is a big thing across the United States, are starting to charge nursing schools money to have their students go there. That's becoming a real problem. A lot of places are starting to limit what students can do because of liability. That's becoming a real problem. And then some schools are deciding, you know what, fine, we'll just do all simulation. And they're using simulation as a complete substitution rather than complementary. At a meeting I was just at, it is surprising how many schools say, well, they can't get a good experience anyway, so I'm just going to have them do simulation instead. Let me tell you, I love simulation, but it is to complement what we can do with real human beings in the real setting. So we have problems going on there. With all these limited resources, I am fearful, what keeps me up at night are reaching a breaking point. We cannot just limitlessly grow nursing programs. We need to grow nursing programs in a way that use good economical use of these two limited resources, and that is not currently being factored in. I actually just asked this to a room of deans and directors from small liberal arts colleges at the American Association of Colleges of Nursing meeting this weekend. I asked this question, and now let me maybe stop a second and say, how do you know a nurse is in the room? They'll tell you, right? We talk quite a bit, right? You've noticed. So I asked this to a room of women who I would dare say kind of like to talk and hear their voices quite a bit. And guess how many people responded to that question? No one. And then finally one came up and she said, well, I don't know if I trust those numbers. So we're kind of putting a Band-Aid on the dam and hoping that it holds long term. Again, I think this is a problem with our image of nursing, of what are we doing to our nursing students and what's our long-term commitment to our nursing students and education. Just in case you're not feeling bad enough yet, let's look at just what's happening to nurses in the field too. So a brief look through history. I love these. I know it's kind of small, but there are some good ones on here. So the duties of the hospital nurse in 1887. Now we have actually gotten better in a couple ways. In addition to caring for your 60 patients, each nurse will, 60. So we have that better in some places, but I like different things that we see. So each nurse on day duty will report every day at 7 a.m. and will leave by 8 p.m. except on Sabbath, when you can be often called to 2 feet. Pretty nice for hours, right? Any nurse who smokes, uses liquor in any form, gets her earbud at a beauty shop. No, I'll get my hair. Frequent dance halls will be a call nurses that anymore. So just kind of some fun stuff about what nursing was like in 1887. Now let's go to World War II. So what's a good nurse after World War II? Tidy and loyal to the hospital and its personnel, compliant with the orders of the physician and directives of nursing management, always busy. If census was low, fold laundry, clean shelves, prepare supplies to be sterilized, and ability to get the work done no matter how many patients assigned. Again, if we really zone in on number 2, so compliant with the orders of physicians, I think that still kind of goes out into the image of nurse today, like, oh, you're just following the orders the doctors give you. So 21st century, I made a decision not to write anything down here because I thought it'd be better to hear. I suspected some students might be here, some colleagues might be here. What is a nurse today? Like if you had to tell some things about like your average day on the floor, what's that look like? Can I have some brave souls volunteer what a day in a 21st century nurse looks like? What are some things that keep you up at night thinking about your job? Don't be shy. Nurse-to-patient ratios. Like, what could be an average day?
On a regular medical floor, it'd be like 6 to 1. You get reports, you have to make sure other patients are okay, go look up their charts, all their labs, any kind of diagnostics, pass meds on all of them, do all your charting until they get that medical report when they're discharged, and then start all over again for daily medications, diagnostics.
Doesn't sound like you're very busy. What else? Student, what do you think? Phone calls. You have to carry a phone. Yeah. You now have to carry work phones with you so you are 100% accessible at all times, right? 1887 didn't have that. They did have to carry coal with them, but what else? Crystal? Why would you question a physician order? Because you're in charge of the patient. So if the physician orders something and you do it and it's not right, do you get in trouble? And in the 21st century, what happens when you get in trouble in nursing? You probably get fired and probably get a lawsuit. And we have this pretty big legal system going on when it comes to medical lawsuits, right? So yeah, I would say what is expected of the day in, day out care of nursing, every year we've managed to add more and more and more. If you go back to when I had to take the NCLEX, there were about 700 meds we were expected to know. Now, guesses? More like 9,000. Yeah, so just a couple things a little different. No pressure, guys. So we are adding on and adding on and adding on, not necessarily taking a whole lot off. Technology has made life easier in some ways, but really harder in a lot of ways. Back when I started nursing, we would document on a chart with our pen. You made a mistake, you could pull out a new paper and redocument. And no one later on could be like, you documented that at exactly this time because you wrote down what time it was. Now there's this big brother computer watching that if you go in and document something and then you go back 5 minutes later and change it, a lawyer could say like, hey, why'd you document that and change it 5 minutes later? And then why was that 2 hours after it was done? And what were you? There's a lot of pressure for nurses today. So education has to help them with that. And again, how do we get this all in? So how are the students doing all this? Like, let's, take a chance. Let's Google search nursing student memes or images. What do you think comes up? The modern image of the nursing student.
You guys were left pretty good in the first one. We're kind of noticing it this one. Like, we just put down holes for that,
right? So what's this look like then for our nurses? Is it just a nursing school thing? What do we get when we look for nurses? That's my personal favorite. So what's being said out there about the profession, about the organization? Well, nurses are less healthy than the average American. What? Our number one healthcare provider body is less healthy than the average American? Research shows that nurses are more likely to be overweight, have higher levels of stress, and get less sleep. And as learned in most private healthcare profession, nurses are critical to the health of the nation. We need healthy nurses, and we do not really have them right now. And I think that's a real problem when we're looking on the demands of nursing. It's leading to an unhealthy nursing population. This is leading to a lot of nurse burnout. So one thing those datas and those workforce projections haven't said, which maybe the gut was onto something when maybe that's not right. Yeah, maybe we're not looking at how many nurses are we going to lose because they're just too stressed out to do the job anymore. All threats to nursing image. Who's feeling a little bad right now? I kind of took our good nursing image and it kind of ruined it. All right. Still have a little bit of time for proposed solutions. Good news. All right. So I say, you know what? I got some history people in the room, right? Let's take a look back to maybe get an idea of how we can move forward. So we have Florence Nightingale, right? Kind of the mother of nursing, she's often called. She was faced with some pretty bad stuff. Basically, like the Crimean War, everyone was dying, and it was pretty appalling, pretty bad. But she started using ideas like infection control. I don't know, washing your hands when you're taking care of people and using clean equipment, kind of mind-boggling stuff, right? But she brought these ideas to the Crimean War, and then she used statistics. She wrote down everything to improve patient care, and through that, she was able to document that soldiers' death rate decreased from 42% to 2%. As a result of just changing sanitary conditions. And she didn't stop there. She mercilessly wrote her political people. Supposedly she had a little bit of bipolar and was a little manic and just kept writing a lot of letters. But hey, it worked because she did not stop. She used political activism to affect healthcare reform and improve Army hospital conditions, not just for this one war, but for the future. And ultimately, this led to the first official establishment of a nursing school in England to help better educate other nurses and keep these ideas going with the next generation, this legacy idea. And a lot of those nurses came over to the United States and helped expand what was going on in the United States too. So she used these ideas, using statistics, using a political voice to advocate for the patient and make it better for patient and nurses alike. At the same exact time, we had Mary Seacole, who was also a nurse, a little bit differently trained, gained a lot of information originally from Jamaica, just traveling the world and being a student of life as she traveled the world. She tried to join the nurses. She tried to join Florence Nightingale and was denied. Tried and was denied and denied and denied. Did she take no for an answer? That would kind of end my story, right? No. When refused, she used her own money, and she was not a wealthy person, and she went there anyways. Her and Florence Nightingale together were looked at the mothers of nursing at that time. And again, lifelong learner who didn't take no for an answer and said, I want to make a difference. And this image of formal nursing really started to grow. So before the Civil War, nursing schools existed, but weren't that common. But nurses, especially in the Civil War, with so many injuries and so much need for educated health professionals, started saying, we need to do something about this. And we really saw an emergence of nursing school starting then. But just like role confusion now, how do you tell the difference between a nurse who says they're a nurse and a nurse who's been educated to be a nurse? Because we didn't have laws saying that back then. This is where the nursing pin actually started. So in May, when we have our pinning ceremony, it's not just a symbolic thing of here's a pin, but it actually has deep roots going back to the Civil War, when the nursing pin was something you could wear to say, I'm not just a nurse, I'm a nurse who's been educated to be a nurse, and I'm here to give you the best care I can. So what do we do? I would say kind of a 3-step process here if I'm going on a political campaign. Nursing needs a political voice. And if you ask nurses, most of them are going to say, I don't like politics. I don't want to be political. But no matter what, we need to have a political voice. We need to use data to ground our policies. We need to use the data to help us move forward. And where I'm going with this is I am an advocate for BSN as entry level to practice. And you might think that this is a gimme, but it's not. It's not even, it's a pretty split decision between the nursing population on why. So let me tell you a little bit about, let me actually tell you a little bit about what happened just this weekend. You know what? I'm going to jump back a little bit. I started really looking into this when I was in grad school. And when I was in grad school and I started digging deeper, I started reading some articles about this. I found out in 1965 was the first time the American Nurses Association said, hey, why don't we make BSN the entry level of practice? 1965. And I'm like, what? So in grad school I saw this. I wrote a paper about it. Then I started teaching, and I heard more about it. And then I became the chair of the department and went back to get my doctorate, and I heard more about it. And I'm like, we are still talking about this, and where are we going with it? And that's why I'm so excited about today, because of what just happened this weekend. Because there's been times where it felt like maybe this won't ever go anywhere. Well, as of the 25th, my days are blurring together. So whichever day that was, Sunday, right? Sunday. The American Association of Colleges of Nursing released this statement saying they strongly believe that registered nurses should be, at minimum, prepared with the BSN or equivalent, because there is a BA and a BS in nursing, didn't even talk about that, offered by an accredited 4-year college or university. So, can we just clap for that a minute, because I'm pretty excited. So I got to vote on this, and let me tell you, it was pretty exciting. It passed by an 85% to 15% margin, so really excited that happened. And you still might be thinking a little bit about why. Here's a few examples. There's been a lot of studies to prove this point, but the likelihood of dying within 30 days of admission, wow, that sounds pretty good, right? Associated with better outcomes for patients and nurses. So when we're talking about stressed out nurses, more intensive nurses, better it is for them too. Lower patient mortality by 10.9%. Okay. Average reduction of 2.2 deaths for every 1,000 patients, like that. 4% decrease in the risk of death. Yeah, that's pretty good. 14% lower odds of inpatient death within 30 days. Now, nursing is kind of unique, because who in this room is going to need a nurse at some point? And if you had to pick, do you want a nurse who, you know what, we know we need educated nurses, but time and money, let's just get them through? Or do you want the nurse who you say, you know what, we know it takes a little more time, but we want to focus on the quality, not the quantity. Who do you want as your nurse? Better yet, who do you want as your family member's nurse? And I think that's what we're promoting, is not just what's best for me when I need it, but what's best for the world. And we have data that really gives a strong argument that the BSN nurse makes a difference. It's there. Actually, really cool little thing, in New Jersey, one time this newspaper got a cool idea of like, hey, let's publish how many BSN nurses are at each of the local hospitals. Guess what happened? All of a sudden, all the patients started going to one hospital, which had a lot more BSN nurses. So guess what the other hospitals had to do? They had to start saying, you know what, we'll pay for you to get BSNs, but better yet, we're only going to hire BSNs. So when the public knows this, there is a shift in care. The problem is the public usually doesn't know who gets to take care of them. So BSNs, better patient outcomes. I'm going to advocate for it. In your tenure lecture, you're supposed to, make your argument, and this is definitely mine. And I'm not alone. In 2010, we had this landmark study. If you Google it, every single thing says landmark study. The IOM, the Institute of Medicine, Future of Nursing, and their number one thing was let's have a higher level of nursing education. That's really what I'm calling for, too. And what else happens if we do this? It's not just to patients. We'd eliminate a little bit of that role confusion. So now at least we would know who the RN in our room is. We would know what level of education they had. We would also think about it if we were using the same people who are eligible to teach in community colleges do meet the requirements to teach in BSN programs. There's not necessarily different requirements there. And likewise, we're using the same clinical facilities, so we would be using those limited resources to make a more educated workforce. So I would dare say that's a better use of our economical limited resources. We'd have better prepared nurses for the future of healthcare when we talk about the stress on the nurses. Also, we saw that it just helps nurses who are nurses feel better too, so hopefully a little bit less stress on the nursing workforce. And even could help create more faculty, because the likelihood of a nurse who starts with a bachelor's going on to a master's is 10 times more likely to happen than the nurse who starts with an associate degree and then has to get a bachelor's and then has to get a master's, and that basically never leads to a doctorate. So BSN is entry level to practice. Believing the modern image of nursing can change and keep moving forward, and we can see progress and growth. These are pictures from this weekend, and there's a couple things I want to point out.
If you look here, this was the banner that was on the stage the entire weekend. And I can't help but laugh because I'm kind of fixated on this idea of image right now. And I'm like, all right, look at the statistics. Like, this is a nice, like, ooh, education, the image of nursing. How would our education look like, right? So we have a woman who is definitely not in her mid-60s. We have a man. We don't have those. But I love the juxtaposition of like, oh, look at the image of nursing with our speakers. Any idea on who this guy here is? Probably, if I had to guess, probably about like 6'4" to 6'6". I get heels on. Not what you picture as your average nurse, right?
That is Dr. Ernest Grant. Any idea who Dr. Ernest Grant is? I think my son raised his hand, but I don't think he knows. So he is the president of the American Nurses Association. Bet you wouldn't have guessed that if we think of our image of nursing, right? She's 32, she's African American, maybe not your go-to image of nursing, but she is the youngest African American woman ever elected to Congress, and she's from Naperville, and she's Lauren Underwood. She's from our area, and she is an advanced practice nurse who has taught, and she is now in the House of Representatives. Like, how cool is that? And let me tell you, when she came and she talked to our group, the room is down there, packed room, probably about 600 people, and she just brought the house down. It was amazing. So nursing is moving forward, and we can see the modern image is changing because people aren't taking the status quo as what has to be the future. They're working together for it. If you look down here, it's pretty small, but you can see, those stats are still pretty relevant, but that doesn't have to dictate where we go to the future. So I think there's a lot of hope wrapped up in there, and I was really excited about what went on this week. And when it comes to the holistic approach for caring for the nursing student and the nurse, there's a lot of work going on there too, but we need to support stuff like this. So the American Nurses Association, again, the biggest association that kind of represents those 4 million nurses, are all encouraged to join, has launched Healthy Nurse, Healthy Nation, really focusing on how do we help the health of the nurse. Time's Up Healthcare is all about increasing safety and demands for nurses. Nursing Now is all about moving the safety of nurses forward. End nurse abuse. Did you know 1 in 4 nurses will be physically abused by their patients? It's considered one of the most dangerous professions now. It's actually up there in the list with like deep sea crab fishing. And at first I'm like, am I one in the, and then I'm like, oh yeah, like I've been bit, I've been clawed, I've been kicked, tried to punch me a little too fast. It happens. We also have American Holistic Nurses Association, but this is where I thought I had a unique opportunity. We have the people in this room, people at a liberal arts education place that are teaching not just skills, but also just about life. Co-workers in Christ, thinking not just about you, but you as a human being created in the image of God. Pretty cool. Nurses and non-nurses alike. This is where there is no just nurses need to care for nursing. Everyone needs to care for nursing. So I thought, how cool that I get to come talk to a room full of people about how we can help nurses. And this is really where Trinity and where I see my role being unique. A lot of people have asked me, so where are you going next? Like, what's your big thing? And I said, no, this is my thing. This is my plan, because I can't imagine teaching nursing without kind of just the undercurrent of Christian nursing. For me, I can't separate what nursing is from what being a Christian is. For me, caring for people is about recognizing that everyone's been created in the image of God, and that I'm going to do my best, not just for me, not just for them, just the work I'm doing here is someone else's work, and that's the Lord's work. So creating, letting my actions be those of love. So my actions as a nurse, my actions as an educator being of love. Even pushing a student really hard, if it helps prepare them, to me that's an action of love, and that's something I can do. I can feel differently about it being in a Christian space like Trinity, where I can go home and pray about a student, and I can know that I'm pushing them for those reasons, makes me feel a lot better about it. So I see the two as not being able to be separated. And that is led me to where I am today. So I think we have time for a real quick video here to end on a positive note. as I was looking for images, I kind of thought that was a fun one to end on. I love that video. Kind of gives you goosebumps, right? Chokes me up every time. But when we looked at it, maybe not perfect hair in every clip, also missing some vomit, but a lot better image of nursing than those first two pictures. And I think it kind of goes after the heart of what we do. So, on that note, any questions?